Running Sentences presents A Thieves' Nightmare. Part 6. Unexpected, Expected Consequences. A fight breaks out, leaving everyone scrambling for safety. This fight, however, is quick, fast, it ends not too well for Nico and company. This is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, events, and incidences and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, real situations, real events, and or fictional events, characters, situations, businesses, and so on is purely coincidental. Copyright 2022. Michael Honnery. All rights reserved. With plenty of guns pointed this way and that, plus a few pointed towards Nico, he wondered if this was the end of all things for him. Donard's driveway provided plenty of clear sightlines for such a shootout, and would allow for quick work any such shooting. What a way to go, and the only thing anyone seemed to be waiting for, or looking for, was the go mark. Before we do this whole bang-bang event, I do have to ask Lewis, how did you know about this and us going for this new energy?
Your security sucks at protecting information. I wandered in and found out all I needed to know about what was going on. Plus some other dirty little secrets. Fun stuff. But you do get up to some boring stuff, don't you?
It's the usual cabal of rapturous things to keep one entertained when you have little more money than sense. And it's not really my thing, but it's all to keep up appearances, of course. But you know that, and one does what they have to do in those sorts of situations.
You mean like right now? We do what we must do?
The big head of the company waved his hand and turned to head for the barn. Lewis wasted little time running towards Nico and Dominique, as he and Temple both opened fire at the guards. There was plenty of gunshots, deafening ones going on and on. It was making it harder to hear. The bullets did not seem to be directed at Nico, which she was thankful for, but they were getting closer since Lewis was approaching him. He did his best to back up and find some place to hide. There was a nearby car with no one around it, so he went for that and was followed by Dominique and Temple. But they weren't really following him as bullets zipped this way and that, with a few zings echoing in his ears. No, his associates all went for the ditch by the side of the driveway, which provided better cover. Or so maybe it appeared anyway. Nico himself ducked behind the engine compartment and wheel of this vehicle he'd found, with the hope that it might do enough to protect him.
What are you doing?
Hiding? What else would I be doing in this moment? Sheet metal on cars doesn't protect against much. Well, it might stop a few pistol rounds, but you're risking it because they can get through, and anything larger will get through. There was a thump, and a piece of metal in front of him suddenly opened up the sheet metal, as if a bullet had passed through, or tumbled through. Ooh, I see. He ducked down and rolled his way away from the car and to the ditch, hoping that no more bullets were coming his way. But more thunks were hitting the car, so his hopes were not high as more zings rang out around him, and a few puffs of dust kicked up here and there. But he came into the ditch a few seconds later. Well, what are we to do now, Mr. Lewis? You seem to want us more than the information that Donard is providing. Otherwise, why would you run towards us?
As Caleb will soon find out, he can't get close to time. Yet two of you can. What's more valuable than a person who can get near the stuff to harvest it? And I might already have a location where it might be. In a grand...
Are you kidnapping us?
What a grand idea.
Lewis had his gun pointed towards Temple before she could turn hers towards him.
Now, we all want to get out of here alive. The gunmen don't care much about us getting away, as long as they can chase us away and say they tried their best. It's only when they figure out what they're missing that we have to begin worrying. So, you three start running across that field filled with horses right now, please.
There was no need for any extra push or threats. Nico got up, clambered past the nearby fence, and began heading across the field as fast as he could. He decided not to run quickly, since that would probably exhaust him.
Good, keep going until you see a road, and I mean an actual road, not something that's going between these horse fields. Ones with cars zipping past and all that.
Since the voice didn't sound that far off, Nico increased his pace a bit. He could see both Dominique and Temple had drawn even with him, which didn't bode well.
How far is it to this road? Oh, it's a little ways away.
The non-answer did not help matters. There were still bullets chasing after them, though it seemed to have slackened in intensity a bit. The hiss and zing or crack of noise did still come chasing them from somewhere behind them. Nico kept glancing backwards every time there was such a shot, which made Dominique come closer to him and to try and keep him going forward.
Is looking that bad?
It is if they have anything larger than a pistol round, or if they have a good shot amongst them. Even a pistol round can go pretty far. Looking back will only slow us down, Nico.
Those two are right, you know. To look back is to invite the past back into your life. Who needs a past when you have the present screaming at you?
That didn't sound right to Nico, but with a fence cutting this field off, now coming upon them, Nico didn't really have time to point that out. Up and over they went, then across the small dirt pathway road, plus another fence into a new field. The run continued.
Yes, but if you don't learn from the past, then you wind up repeating lessons already learned, don't you?
You don't want to do that, do you?
Oh, yes, but you have to repeat lessons all the time anyway. People can tell you things all they want, but you have to experience them to actually learn them. Telling them doesn't make them learn it. They have to experience it on some level. Looking back at history is fine, but it gets you no real-life experiences, and life experiences are the only thing we have a tendency to listen to.
Nico found himself on the verge of turning around and stopping to argue, but did not. It wouldn't achieve anything, and the bullets hadn't stopped chasing after them yet. Even though they were in this second field, and about halfway across it, he gave up on the thought and just kept moving, hoping that they were no longer really targets for the shooters. There was no point in arguing with the man who had a gun to him, that was close to him, and might shoot him. After another fence blocking the way was crossed, they found themselves in a small open field, and beyond that appeared to be several cars zipping past on a road in front of them, which was good. Their pace slackened a bit now as they crossed this last field and then found the road in front of them. A little ways down it was a parked car.
Our rides, ladies and gentlemen, will soon be here. Are you ready for a trip?
Stop pretending we have a choice in the matter, Lewis, please.
I was only being nice, Dominic. No need for snappiness.
How is taking people hostage and ordering them about nice?
Semi-nice, then. And what's your problem, Temple? I still have quite a quandary with you, so don't you start in on me.
There were quite a few looks between the trio at Lewis, but none of them bothered to complain beyond that. And just as they were beginning to head towards this parked car up the road, another one came to a stop next to them.
Oh, by the way, dear ladies and maybe gentlemen, if you would like to surrender your weapons, I can't have them being used against me, so out with them and put them on the ground.
It was a van that had pulled up next to them, a sleek black thing that looked like it might hold prisoners of some sort. Its side door popped open and out came two guards, who instantly approached the trio.
Don't worry, these are my associates. They won't harm you or use violence on you, unless you choose violence, and then they will use it. They do love a good bit of knocking around with their fists and violence and all that, but it is mostly a love of inflicting it on other people. So if you do hit them, they're gonna hit you back about twofold.
The two guards had moved to stand in front of Nico, who merely looked at them. They were both a foot taller than him and lithe, which was unusual since one always expected bulky guards. One of them came around to his side and grabbed him, while the other began patting him down.
even to the smallest spot, looking for weapons of some sort. For once, Nico was thankful that he didn't much like carrying them. They didn't much suit his style, and the only thing going through his mind right now was he didn't really want to know what they would do if they actually found one. Although his imagination was tending to run off towards punch in the stomach, punch in the head, punch, punch, punch. They did not find anything, though, and they moved on towards Dominique next. She handed over her pistol that she had hidden on her leg. "I do not carry anything other than that one, but feel free to check, since you will anyway." They did so, and found nothing. Everyone's attention turned to Temple, who was glowering at them. "What, do you expect me to hand over my gear to you?" "Ideally, yes, but we can also leave you here, if you would prefer that. Take your chances with the Particle Corp." Lewis waved his gun back towards the horse farm that Donner owned. Temple hadn't budged an inch, and the two guards were now on either side of her, both looking antsy and wary of everything. "Temple, we don't have time. If you could, please." "Where do you plan to take us? Answer that first." Good question, Temple. Good question. Well, I guess I can deal with that if it gets us going. We are headed for Clipping Bay. It's got some weird, mysterious surroundings to it, and it includes a story of a former town that up and vanished one day. Mysteriously, mischievously interesting. Is that good enough for you? It sounds like a place that might contain this time energy. Temple didn't look like she was sold, but she also tossed her gun over to one of the guards and drew out another 2 hidden guns, along with a couple of daggers. Nico glanced away to make sure he wasn't seeing anything he wasn't supposed to, since she did lift up her shirt to reveal her bra and pull down her pants even. It was just, you looked anywhere else. That's all of it. The guards still gave her a rough once-over once she pulled her shirt back down and her pants back up. They found nothing of interest, and Lewis pointed them towards the van, with the guards corralling the trio to it. Nico was the first through the open door. "Trust me, this will all be over quickly. We will have a fun little adventure together." Lewis's words were bouncing about in Nico's mind as he settled into one of the seats in the back of this vehicle. Dominique and Temple joined him as the door was rolled and slammed shut. The only window provided to them looked to be a small grate in the wall between the driver's section and back here. It also didn't look like it allowed them to talk to the people up front, and, well, it didn't look open, so it didn't matter as the engine roared to life, and the uninsulated back of the van filled with noise. The trio were quiet as they were bounced around in the back on this trip. It didn't take long for them to lose track of time and be forced to just sit back and sort of hold on to one another, since it wasn't really a comfortable ride. Though through this trip the van never seemed to lose the whine of its engine, but at long last it did slacken and allowed them to be able to hear again, as the vehicle then rumbled to a stop and all noise of the engine died away. They would pile out of the van when the door opened for them, eager to stretch their legs and get some fresh air. It was quiet here, but that was soon interrupted as a jet engine pushed the plane down a nearby runway and up into the air. Nico gulped and wondered why they were here at an airport, but then realized why. Clipping Bay, wherever it was, probably needed a plane to get to. He saw Lewis heading for a nearby small passenger jet as the guards began moving them in that direction as well. Does anyone know where this Clipping Bay is?" The guards remained silent. He wasn't actually expecting them to provide an answer, but it would have been nice. He hoped maybe that Temple or Dominique could provide some insight, but Temple shook her head no, and Dominique took her time thinking about it, before also shaking her head no. They arrived at the stairs up to the plane, one by one, and went up. Aboard the little jetliner, they went to some front seats and found that the guards had gotten between them and Lewis, who sat near the back. The trio settled in, with the plane soon closing up and moving off. Not long after that, they were in the air and cruising at some unknown altitude because the pilot did not radio back that information. They even at one point during the flight had sandwiches served to them by one of the guards,
But other than that, the trio fell asleep, since talking seemed like a bad idea, and Lewis probably would have interrupted them anyway. The screech of brakes and bump of tires awoke them, just as morning was breaking outside the plane, which was hurrying itself to a stop on a worn-out patch of asphalt, one that didn't seem to have anything around it aside from trees, which Nico could only tell as they zipped past the window. The plane came to a full stop, short of the end of the runway, but did not attempt to get off of it. There was no other tarmac to go to, and the engines sounded like they were winding down. Added to this was the guard who went past the trio to get the door open, and then stood aside, signaling that they should go first. Dominique got up first, and she moved over to see what was outside the door, and would gently jump down. Temple would join her, and Nico would be the last out. He paused at the doorway, looking out and realizing that there were no stairs, and that he would have to jump down the several feet to the ground. With a deep breath, he stepped off when he was sure that Temple and Dominique were both clear of where he would land. With a rough thump, he did, and scrambled a few feet away as the guard, and then, a few minutes later, Lewis joined them. As they were doing this, a group of off-road-looking vehicles were making their way towards them from the woods, and then would come to a stop right beside them.
"All right, to Clipping Bay. Everyone aboard for the next leg. It's going to take a while."
The entire group got into vehicles, with the trio now being split up. The vehicles going one by one out of the abandoned airfield and shortly onto an abandoned road. This didn't last long, though, as they were soon directed off-road down a small, winding trail that didn't look like much of a road that would allow vehicles on it. Still, the vehicles were brushing past on this trail, up and down as they bounced around on the path, as it seemed to only get smaller as the deeper they went into these woods. Nico did his best to brace himself, using the handles inside the vehicle, but even then he was rocked back and forth as the vehicle kept up a good clip and just jumped over rocks and roots and everything else that got in the way. This Clipping Bay must be urgent to get to, otherwise why would they be going so fast? It was the only thought he could cling to as they rattled around and kept going onward. The trip came to a stop near a few buildings with trees surrounding much of the area. To Nico, it didn't look like this was a bay, but he shrugged at the thought as he got out. They were led to a nearby building, and through a few of the woods he swore he could see the faint signs of water beyond them. If it wasn't, his imagination was playing tricks on him, and it was doing a damn good job of it. The scream of gulls and the feeling of salty air felt really real, so he wasn't sure whether it was or wasn't. Lewis, having taken the lead, seemed uninterested in explaining things as of yet, so he didn't bother asking him, and the guards hadn't been exactly friendly or willing to speak, so he didn't bother with them. A well-furnished, comfortable, and warm living room allowed Dominique, Temple, and Nico to all sit and relax for a second. The guards were now gone, and that left Lewis, who had disappeared towards the kitchen area. "Well, you two have gotten me into a big mess." "It's not a big deal. I mean, it probably would have happened eventually, judging from our luck, but we get what we want, in a way. We want to be near time so that we can survive. This is just what we wanted." "Dominique, you are way too okay with this." "There's no point in being down about it, Temple. You know as much as I do that being pissy won't help. Besides, this space is a bit too nice for Lewis. Something is up."
"What are you two babbling about? What is too nice for me? And is it too nice for me? What are we talking about?"
No, Lewis. What I was trying to point out to my friends is that you don't provide such a nice space for someone you're just using. We're not just being used, are we?" Lewis came fully into the room, carrying a bunch of cans as he moved carefully past the couch towards the coffee table, setting the drinks down on it. All eyes were on him, and Temple had perhaps the most hostile of looks centered on him, but he ignored her.
"Well, I could give you a worse place, throw you out to the wolves and so on. But then you probably wouldn't do what is needed. And before you protest, Temple, this would wipe away the running away debt while on a job for you. As well, for both of you, you and Dominique, because you, Dominique, haven't really fully repaid me yet either.
Temple's look softened, and there was a sidelong glance towards Dominique, who nodded yes, but also shrugged. What about me? What do I get out of this?
I haven't figured that out exactly yet, but it will be something. As long as the job is completed, then we can agree to something, I'm sure.
How about I get left alone after this? You protect me since I did such a big favor for you, but I never see the likes of you ever again as long as my life isn't being threatened and kidnapped and so on. And even if it is, you have to provide proof. You can't just up and kidnap me saying I'm being kidnapped by somebody else.
No promises, but I can think on it, and I'll let you know down the road. For now, though, relax and enjoy your time off. It is the afternoon, and there's not much time left in the day, so tomorrow we will head up to that place bright and early, okay? There is some food in the fridge, and some more drinks, should you need them. Enjoy.
Their captor moved towards the door, leaving them shortly after that. The trio were mostly frozen in place, trying to figure out all that had just gone on. Nico had decided to go exploring this building, since that was a better use of time than standing around doing absolutely nothing. He found himself up a set of stairs and down a hallway. He opened the first door he saw, and saw that it was a bedroom. Standard affair of a place, looked decent, nice enough bed, but one never knew until they actually lie in the bed if it was going to be an okay space. It might even take a few nights of sleeping on certain mattresses to really know how well you could sleep. He decided he wanted to know, and went over towards the bed, flopping onto it face first. Sleep soon came and went as a knock on the door woke him up from his half-asleep state, since his brain was only half letting him sleep, since it wanted to think about every little thing that had gone on lately.
Yeah.
You okay? Nope. Maybe. What am I okay from? This life you've got caught up in?
Right, the life I've been forced into for some strange reason.
He semi-got off the bed and was sitting up, rubbing his face, trying to wake up fully again. It was cold in here, and he shivered, wanting to grab the blankets to cover himself, even though he was fully dressed.
Yeah, that.
I'll survive, I suppose. Not much choice in the matter. He tried to grin, since he decided there was no need to go down a dreary train of thoughts, and
providing a grin might just beat that back a little bit.
The cold rim was not making it easy, though,
as it just felt like it was sapping away at his energy.
So he got up and moved towards the door. Lewis mentioned something about food. And do you know how long I've been gone for?
About an hour.
As for the food, well, there is some, not much, but it's food. We aren't staying here long after all, from all appearances. Right, give us some comforts, but only enough to keep us slightly happy and comfortable. We wouldn't want to leave here if we had tons and tons of food, would we? Such a silly way to think about things. Oh well, let's get some food before Temple decides she wants it all for herself. Dominique rolled her eyes at him. Are you done complaining?
Mostly, yeah.
She turned and was gone from the room before he could say any more. A small bit of soup from a set of cans was soon warmed up on the stove and then dished out. The trio did not sit and eat together, with each finding their own little spot to eat. Once done, though, there was nothing to do, and further exploration of the house revealed only bedroom areas to them. They soon had picked out bedrooms for real, and had gone to sleep despite it not even being late in the evening. Early morning rolled around far too soon, and they were awoken by a loud megaphone yelling, "Wake up!" Nico got out of his bed in a hurry to stop all of the noise and racket. He'd made his way to the living room, still yawning, and was greeted by the guard with the bullhorn, still yelling. Thankfully, Nico wasn't staying there, as the guard pointed outside, and so he went out into the early morning air, mostly to avoid the megaphone. It took a few more minutes for Dominique and Temple to show up, both looking equally tired, and to which he felt he probably looked the same.
Our trek is on foot out of this place and will take us until the afternoon. Are you three ready?
Temple shook her head no first, with the rest joining in milliseconds later. To this, Hunter Lewis shrugged and turned and began trekking off towards the woods. He had been behind them, and now was already leaving them. They found they had little choice but to follow, as 2 guards took up a rear guard action on them, not allowing them to run away. The woods they went into didn't last long, as it gave way to a bay area where cold air swept across constantly. There was no area one might consider to be beach-like. Instead, the water crashed into trees and rocks that made up the border of the bay. And there was also no path, and found themselves stumbling along the edge between the rocks and space and trees and brush as they went along the outline of the bay, and headed for the far side of it, where an inlet looked like it stood. The hike was exhausting, and kept going even as they reached where they were going. Lewis had led them out onto a small, rocky outcrop that spanned into a wide piece of land near the far side of the bay. It was not too far out, but it wasn't close either. The waves also made their presence known as they came crashing into the rocks that bridged their way to this little outcrop, and the waves did their best to make sure that their paths got nice and wet as they kept going across. Past this little bridge, they went into the inlet aisle, where trees seemed to love to grow. The area was thick, and whatever grew here seemed to love it because it was actually really green. Where is this place, Lewis? You said we'd be there by now.
Up ahead. Won't be much to look at, but you'll see it. It has an aura that cannot be denied.
Is it blue?
What do you mean by that?
The time stream, or the time thing, whatever we came across. It has a blue hue to it. Wisps of blue light, maybe, is a better way to describe it. But Nico would be able to tell you better than I would. He got closer to it.
I don't think it's blue, but I've only gotten as close as the front door to this place.
Do you feel sick when you suddenly get close to it? Lewis came to a stop and looked back at Dominique, who had asked the question, and had an odd expression. It was half hidden by a big green leaf from some nearby plant. He brushed that out of the way.
Is that also part of that? What do you mean? Did I suddenly get sick?
It's what happened to me, and a bit to Nico. The closer I got to it, the made me feel ill in my stomach, and I just couldn't, and my head felt like it was swimming away. Just this weird general malaise that came over. I couldn't stand it, and I had to get out of the place.
Well, I've never experienced any of that anywhere near this place. It did give me the creeps, but, I swore I could see lights dancing around inside the house, but, not any of that sickness stuff.
Dominique cocked an eyebrow at him. She apparently didn't believe him, and Nico wasn't sure he believed him either. How would one consider dancing lights to be time energy? Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but he hadn't seen it so far, so probably not. It didn't make any sense, and the group began its slow trek forward once again, once Lewis had turned around. A few more feet led them to what was not a clearing, but what probably had once been one. The trees were not as tall here, and they doubted what was a sort of clearing space. And in this space of an area, one could make out the frame of a wooden log cabin hidden among the small grove of trees. Lewis picked his way around the last of the obstacles in this area and pointed to what had probably once been a front door.
This is the place.
And, what do you expect us to do here, Mr. Lewis?
Draw out the energy, or the whole deal is off, and, see what's inside. And, if you don't, I will turn you over to the government, for a nice reward for terrorizing people with harebrained schemes.
Or you could just abandon us here?
On land that I own, Dominic? No. I'm not leaving anyone here who shouldn't be here. Now, you two go, while Temple stays here looking sour, and as protection.
Nico glanced at Temple, who did have a rather annoyed and sour look on her face. He frowned, but started forward anyway. It was best to get this done. The stone stairs looked to be the only solid thing about this place as Nico stepped up to them. He could see inside the place, even from where he stood, since the door was missing and there was no floor in place, and in spots the wall was even missing. He noted that there was no wispy smoke or hue anywhere near this place as he stepped up the first step. "You've turned brave all of a sudden." "Well, I don't see any of the trappings from the last time I was near this stuff, so it feels safer to me, but what do I know?" "In all your experience in finding out about these time streams, Dominic, have you come across something like this?" "Not this exact situation, no. I've only had experiences with the blue mist. There were a few reports about other colors being seen and associated with time, I guess." He nodded as he clambered up the final 2 steps. The inside was barren and grassy and looked bug-infested. There were some floor remaining near the sides of the house and the edges around it, but not much. The sun was beating down on the place through patches and spots in the roof, allowing him to see all of this. He gulped and wondered if it would be okay to go in. Nothing looked wrong, but the same could be said about the house on the island, aside from the whole blueness. "Losing your nerve?" "Yep. You feeling any side effects like sickness? I know you just talked about all of that, and I think that's the only way we really have of knowing whether or not this is a whole time stream event thing." She pulled a face as he looked back. And that shocked him. He hadn't expected to see that. But what did it mean? Was she telling him that she'd been faking some of it? Nico found himself half in and half out of the door at that point and froze there as he tried to decipher it. "What was that look?" Well... Did you fake illness to get out of being around the resort owner?" "A little. I wasn't feeling great, but it wasn't that bad of a feeling either. I just figured I would take a chance to get away, since Victor Hightower tends to be a bit crazed about things he allows on his island, and I didn't want to step on any toes." "Well, in that case, you should get over here right now and come in with me, since I don't want to disappear all alone." She looked like she wanted to shake her head no, but he gave her a hard stare as she put up her hands. Fine, I guess we will deal with this together." When she got up to him, they both stood in the doorway looking into this former house. There was still nothing there, and no hue of color to give him a hint as to what was going on. Dominique had also wrapped her arm around his, linking them together so that they wouldn't be separated. They took a short step down inside the place and waited for something to happen. It felt no different as they walked about, arm in arm, around the house, circling and walking about roughly 20 by 20 foot space. And to be on the safe side, they made another lap around the decently sized space, if this house only consisted of one room. "Anything happening to you?" "Nope. But other than seeing some strange sights, nothing happened to me at the resort either." "I don't know what we're going to tell Lewis about this place, but it looks like a bust." "Afraid of delivering bad news to people?" "Yes and no. More not looking forward to how he will act at said news, but telling him the actual news will be fine. It's the after effects." As they approached the half wall that would be near the door, Nico found himself stopping and pausing for a moment, his attention drawn to a rock near the door. To him, there was an appearance that was slightly wispy and smoky about it. Definitely didn't look like it belonged there. "Do you see that, or am I just seeing things now?" Dominique stopped and stared at the rock as well, and after a second she cocked her head to the side and kept leaning further and further over to see what was to be seen, then came back to standing upright with a shrug. "What are you seeing? A mist-like substance coming off of a rock?" She pointed towards the one he meant, and when he nodded yes, she took a few steps towards it, and then stopped and turned to him.
Does the mist look similar to the stuff on the house from the island? A bit, yes. She came a few steps back towards him and pushed him towards it. What was that for? Time seems to like you. We don't know how it feels about me yet, but, best to put our best foot forward, yes? Nico was shaking his head no, but this was being ignored as she continued to push him towards the rock. It didn't really matter, since if they wanted to leave, they would have to walk past the rock in the first place, so he gave up on trying to stop her. I'm going to examine it. Stop pushing at me. As she did this, he half ran for the door, but to his surprise, she beat him easily there and blocked the door so he couldn't just escape. We have a job to do. No running away. Then what did you just do? Nothing. He wanted to say something more, but stopped himself. It wasn't good to let his frustration out into the open. Not if his life likely depended upon her in figuring out this weirdness behind time. So he moved towards the rock and squatted down next to it. The mist was now pouring from it in little thick blankets. He looked to her again. Tell me something? About time streams? Yeah. Well, what is known is that it acts like a mist, but at other times cannot be seen. Like at the convention center where the nostalgic event was happening. So it comes in all forms, I guess. Collecting it is actually rather difficult, as you need to find a way to make it angry to be able to actually collect it. And how do we know if and when it will attack? That part? No idea. No one survives to tell the tale. The general idea, though, is if you can deliver electric shocks to it, as we did with the suitcase, it does become more angry. Not completely angry, but it does suddenly catch on and vibrate rapidly. Yeah, no one survives except for us, and I didn't see much. 1 minute in the house, a guy was there, and then he was floating clothes. Well, you did see something then. I didn't actually see the guard disappear, but I did see him wandering around in his clothes. Very odd sight. So you used the suitcase to make time angry, or did you do that while I was down in the basement? I didn't, but I did see Mr. Hightower's guards bring in several suitcases and set them around the place. Okay, so perhaps doing whatever they did set time off to act in such a way that it would attack, maybe. Then, as long as we sit around doing nothing to it, hopefully it should leave us alone. Nothing to worry about, or maybe we have to worry that the rock is now sending up a smoke signal to time and that it should attack us. There was a lot of smoke now coming off of the rock, and he took a few steps back. He looked over towards her and she nodded that she could see it now. I take it that you've never seen that sort of thing before. No, never seen it. Do you think that Lewis has some sort of thing setting off time? Probably, but maybe the guards carried it in here. Well, we didn't see him carrying anything. Or unless it was already here, I don't really know. The two stood there, looking between one another, with no grand plans as far as Nico knew of what to do next. If they left the place without an answer, Lewis would probably be angry. But if time stole them away, it might equally be as bad. What do you want to do, Nico? Run away, but that will probably go poorly. So tell Lewis whatever is here is making mist, but not really doing the whole time stream thing. And since we don't really know what this is, and we don't really have any way of proving what it is or isn't, we can't really do much. Sound good? Okay, well, off we go then. By the way, you get to tell him. She vanished from the doorway, and he, not waiting for a second chance, hurried out as well. The rock was now bubbling and steaming more and more, obscuring the interior from view. Out the front door, Nico was met by a loud click, click, click noise that kept repeating itself. He looked about the place and saw a machine atop a tree stump, buzzing away with its clicking noise and vibrating. He took a step towards it and then stopped and looked for Lewis. The man, if he was around, wasn't
visible, and only Dominique was around him. He came about halfway between the front door and where the tree line began to become real big trees again. Do you know where they went? Where did they go?" "No idea. Don't know." "Okay, you find them. I will go turn off that machine in case it does piss off time." There was a nod of agreement from her, and off she went. He wondered for a second, as he watched her go, if she too might vanish. Had time taken these other two, or was Lewis up to some weird plan? He pulled away from those thoughts as the machine kept interrupting with its incessant noise, and it was causing him to worry. He went over towards it and began examining it for an off button. It didn't appear to have one, so he twisted a knob or two until the thing sputtered to a stop. The quiet was nice, but it also felt really too much so, and he began looking around for anything that might distract him from the now quiet, and hoped that the mist was now at peace. "Lewis or Temple, are you hiding out there somewhere?" He wasn't entirely sure why he thought yelling out to them would bring it back an answer. And there was no reply to his cry, so he stood there for a second with his hands on his hips looking about. What to do now? The house was an option to see if it was now full of misty smoke. A look that way told him no from what he could see, but he was also curious to see if any changes had happened to the rock. His curiosity brought him within reach of the front door. A careful step up the stairs and over the entranceway put Nico back inside this house. He'd done all of this automatically, without thinking about what he was doing. The search for knowledge and what to know bringing him inward. His eyes sought out the rock, but it was gone. The room remained a bit steamy and foggy, but this was also beginning to clear up. Still, he waved his hand in front of his face in an effort to get it all to go away and allow him to see a bit more. A few minutes passed before it was gone, and the interior looked like it had. Empty and disused for years, and also neglected. No matter where Nico peered, though, the rock that had been making this steam didn't appear to be there, so he moved to step outside. Back in this little, what was a former front yard, it was tree-filled and grass-filled and brush-filled, so it wasn't much of one. He walked towards the little machine again that had been clicking away to see if it had a name on it or any information, or if what it did, while keeping an eye out for anyone. He felt very alone out here now that the people he'd been with for a little while were now gone. Nico decided to make his way around the machine box that mostly appeared to be some sort of motor with dials on it. There was little to it other than a motor and a plastic top and with those dials, and nothing really discernibly written on it. He pushed a few dials to see if it would react and begin making noise again, but it didn't, and he was soon bored of this. A further look around the place still left him quite alone. "Dominique, are you still around here?" Expectations were incredibly low for a response, since that was the way things were going. But this was soon interrupted when a rustle of leaves drew his attention. Off to the side, with her hands up, from the woods emerged Dominique, looking rather annoyed. Behind her was another person, which was good, but this one held a pointy stick at her back, driving her forward. Now completely unsure of what was going on, he glanced further around the wooded edge, since if there was one mostly nude man in what appeared to be a loincloth, there may be others. Sure enough, a few appeared on the edges of the tree line, which he decided did not bode well for anyone. "A surprise, and I take it not a welcome one. Who are these people, Dominique?" "They didn't say. In fact, I don't know if they can talk, because all I've gotten so far is a stick waved in my face." The group corralled Dominique over towards him while keeping the pointy sticks pointed at them. The ones who'd been near the edge of the tree line were now surrounding them, not giving them any space to move, with the pointy sticks pointed very firmly at them. "Want to hear a far-fetched theory? Is now the time for such things?" "It's as good a time as any." She gave him a sidelong glance while they stood there, waiting for something to happen. "Fine, what is it?"
We've been thrown back in time.
How?
I don't know.
Take it up with time and that disappearing rock that might have something to do with it. Her hands slowly came down as she stared at him. Nico noticed and raised his eyebrows. What? It is only a silly theory, and there's no reason to get mad about it or actually believe in it. Well, I hope it isn't true, since how the hell are we going to get home if it is? Oh, yeah, home would be nice, although now that I take a second to think, this does solve the problem of us having to worry about the damned military corporation and or Hunter Lewis. To this, she punched his arm. Are you going to leave Temple alone to deal with all of that?
Ooh, yeah, forgot about that.
Oops. How did you forget?
I don't know.
Things had begun to shimmer and glow, as fog seemed to be setting around the tree line. It was making things terribly fuzzy. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Maybe time is being nice and sending us home. Or someplace worse. I hope so, but I'm half expecting to wind up right back where we are. They held there for a minute for the fuzziness to fade, but it kept sitting there, waiting them out. End of part 6 of A Thieves' Nightmare. Thank you for listening.